Max Verstappen has shared his real thoughts about George Russell, and it looks like the four-time world champion isn't very happy with how the British driver acted in front of the race officials about the punishment he got after the practice runs. But since Russell isn't really fighting for the championship this year, and 2025 is going to be much more competitive for Mercedes, can this lost respect from Verstappen change how he races against Russell from now on? And more importantly, do we have a new rivalry starting? It's safe to say that Russell and Verstappen got into a very interesting and quite controversial situation during the practice session in Qatar, where Verstappen reportedly blocked Russell, who wasn't even trying to go fast. This caused a one-place penalty for the Dutch driver, who said that he is done with the FIA after getting a penalty for such an obvious thing. Obviously, the Qatar racetrack is very narrow and pretty short, so blocking here isn't something weird. But Verstappen himself felt like Russell drove too fast on purpose, just to get to the position of putting the four-time world champion in this bad situation. And while we see one version of Russell in front of the camera and the media, Verstappen feels like there is a completely different version that we don't see from the Mercedes driver, and that is why he lost all respect for his rival. The words that he used could very well get him in trouble with the FIA. Again, because while he tried to control himself, he did still use some bad words. And when talking about it, Verstappen said, "I was quite surprised when sitting there in the officials' room what was all going on. Honestly, very disappointing, because I think we're all here. We respect each other a lot, and of course I've been in that meeting room many times in my life, in my career, with people that have raced, and I've never seen someone try to mess someone over that hard, and that for me is too much. I lost all respect." Russell always acts very nicely here in front of the camera, but when you are inside with him in person, it is just a different person. I can't stand that, and it's actually better for him to go away. I don't want to get involved into this. Verstappen was clearly walking on a thin line here, because we do know what the FIA thinks about swearing, as the four-time world champion still needs to do community service for swearing in a press meeting at the Singapore race. What is also very important to note is that the champion himself had a talk with Ben Mohammed Sulayem during the last race in Qatar. And while many would think that the main topic of discussion would be the changes in staff that is currently messing up the governing body, that apparently was not the case. The swearing incidents have been the topic that took around 30 minutes of Verstappen and Sulayem's time to discuss, and with the FIA still standing firm on their rules about how the drivers should focus on racing, and only on that without paying attention to anything else, it could make Verstappen even more determined to prove what he is made of. After all, we're talking about a four-time world champion here, and you can't beat him easily when it comes to fighting against him with these sneaky tactics. Verstappen himself might not be the cleanest of drivers on the track, but he is, in fact, very respectful of the rules, and the fact that Russell has managed to make him so angry has definitely put the British driver in a very difficult situation in the upcoming season. Of course, the penalty itself has caused a lot of controversy because Russell wasn't even on a fast lap and he was getting ready for it, so we can only imagine what he said in the officials' room to make Verstappen this mad. We're talking about a man who's won 4 championships in his career, so you could easily imagine that it's very hard to make him angry when he's about to celebrate what he achieved so hard in his career. But what this sets is an example for the upcoming year, because obviously Russell and Mercedes are going to have an extremely interesting season from 2025 onwards, because they've been able to get close to the top 3 teams, and Russell, no matter whether we hate him or love him, he is a tough racer that has proven to be a hard person to beat when he has the right car in his hands. The fact that he got a front row starting position in the last 3 races goes to show that Mercedes might have found a form that would guide them into the next season, and obviously that will affect how the situation will develop between the other drivers as well, because it's one thing to be a rival on the track, but to lose respect for someone, as Verstappen stated, that's something that causes a huge response from him when the field will be more equal from 2025 onwards. But Verstappen made sure to make his feelings known to Russell himself, and apart from the angry speech that he went on in public after the race, A Sky F1 expert reported that after the meeting with the officials, Verstappen did actually say a word or two to Russell when it comes to how he's going to race with him when the important time comes. This is something that was reported by Naomi Schiff, who also didn't want to go too deep into the exact words that were used by Verstappen in the situation. And when talking about it more, Schiff said, "I am not going to repeat Verstappen's words. I don't know if the FIA will give me a fine if I repeat the words." I think Max had a word with George after they left the officials' room. I think he made the message very clear that he should watch his back. Talking more about this situation. Even Christian Horner couldn't believe how Mercedes made such a big deal out of the entire situation, moving Verstappen from the first position, and even though every point counts, Mercedes aren't really fighting for anything as we speak. And when talking about this more, Horner said, "Let's just say, Max wasn't happy with the decision of the FIA. It was a very strange decision because the situation yesterday, both cars were on slow laps, and I did feel that George and Mercedes made a big deal out of it. It was never seen before on a slow lap for Max to end up with a one-place penalty, but he turned the dirtiest side of the starting grid into one of his best starts of the year, and it was clear that wherever George was going to brake, he was going to brake later and turn that grid position into the lead by the end of turn one." Even Horner himself was disappointed with Russell's approach because he feels like Verstappen's disappointment was quite obvious. It's one thing to be a rival on the track, but to have such disrespectful moves and to feel like you're right just because you use the situation to your own advantage is something that is only going to make a driver like Verstappen more angry. And when talking about this more, Horner said, "Max, I think he was disappointed. I mean, if you look at it fairly, one could argue that perhaps George was driving a little too quickly on a slow lap with two slow cars ahead of him, so maybe he was driving recklessly. It was frustrating to get that penalty, but he was already motivated to win this race, and I think it only added to his excitement to get off the line well. I think there was a little bit of game playing going on in that. All in all, it's going to be very interesting to see how the situation is going to develop between these two, because from what we can see, it's not going to be easy at all. For Russell to prove that he can match the racing level of Verstappen. Not to take any credit away from the Mercedes driver, he has proven time after time that he can compete with the best on the track. However, when that driver is Verstappen, then the burden and the pressure is a lot higher, and that is something that Norris has felt throughout the 2024 season as well. There are a handful of drivers who can race against Verstappen without crashing directly into him, such as Leclerc and Hamilton, even though in 2021, we've seen quite a lot of crashes between the championship fighters. So with all this in mind, do you think that Russell has what it takes to take on Verstappen as early as 2025, and with the problems that Red Bull are expected to have in the next year, do you think the Dutch driver will face a lot more competition than he did now, which has the potential to bring back the old version of himself? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're interested in the latest Mercedes drama that is messing up Hamilton's last days within the team, make sure to check out the video that's appearing on your screen right now.